we are going to be working through tonight's session. Tonight is really focused on the business portion of 4-H meetings, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit, but I want to make sure everybody can find the chat box. That's how we're going to communicate tonight. With more than 300 people, we're going to keep our mics closed and we're going to talk through chat. So if you have a question, please feel free to put it in chat. We're trying our best to monitor that, and if we don't get to your question tonight, please rest assured that we will get back to you via email or phone call shortly after tonight. So please feel free to let us know in chat if you've got very specific questions. We're here to help you however we can. Also should say a special thank you to our 3 associate program managers that are joining us, John DeMontmolen, and Katie Sipneski and Jennifer Swenson, our 3 associate program managers that are joining us tonight to help us work through tonight's training. On the screen, you will see their names, their email addresses, and their numbers. If at any time you have a question about big 4-H questions, feel free to email one of the associate program managers or your local educator.
I would also like to thank our friend Laura Pine, who joined us to help with technology, because she's admitting people like crazy. She's helping us with some recording. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Laura from the State 4-H office for all the great work she's helping us do behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Thanks for that, that connection there, Marie. A couple other things that we want you can feel free to give us feedback through the reaction tab, thumbs up. You can give it to us on camera or on your reaction tabs on your Zoom. Feel free to let us know those things as well. And if you have questions, our information will be at the end of this. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We want to thank you for spending the time talking with us today. This is part of the annual leader training that we have for Wisconsin 4-H this year. It is a little different though. It's virtual because a lot of our things are virtual this year. And it is the kickoff to a year of support. It is a kickoff of 3 sessions tonight, next week, and the week after, with each of them focused on a different thing, a different topic. We are focusing this year on the 3 parts of a meeting. And hopefully you've seen the words recreation, business, and education. You hopefully have heard of those 3 things. We should be doing those in our 4-H clubs: business, education, and recreation. A few months ago when we were talking about it, we had a colleague, Laura from Wood County, that shared with us it kind of is a refreshing way to look at it by looking at it from leading, laughing, and learning. And so that is our framework for this year of 4-H. How can we lead? How can we laugh? And how can we learn in 4-H? So we're going to spend one of these sessions for the next 3 weeks talking about each of those topics. So tonight we're going to focus on the business section. And in business section, the reframe or the refocus that we're going to try to put on this is really all about leading. How can we empower our young people to help lead our 4-H clubs and groups? Especially in a time when, I'm just going to speak for myself, my kids are more technologically savvy than I will ever be. So how can we use our young leaders to help us lead us through this time? How can we encourage them to help us build out agendas and build out programming? So we're here today and for the next 2 sessions to give you, we hope, hands-on, tangible things you can use right now to help us get through this time of COVID and hopefully to build up a robust leadership program in our 4-H clubs and groups. So I'm going to be done talking, and I'm going to turn the whole piece over to Jill, who's going to introduce our next topic. So Jill, it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Melinda. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. As Melinda mentioned, we have 3 parts of a meeting. They are traditionally known as business, education, and recreation. So you'll see there's some minute suggestions listed there. So if we were going to have an hour meeting, one of the things you'll notice is that we typically think that's going to be about 15 to 20 minutes. So the business part of our meeting is actually usually pretty short, and we're going to get a little bit more into that today. But let's talk a little bit about what is business. So as we're thinking about business, as we said, this might be a relatively small part of your meeting. One of the things that I get as a question right now is, what if we don't have any business at our meeting? Is that okay? And the answer is yes, your business might be really small right now because you may not be spending money. You may not be making huge decisions about different things. So the business part of your meeting might be relatively small compared to pre-COVID times, compared to right now. And that's okay. What you can do is you might say, we're going to skip this or make this really small, or even the business part of your meeting might be shared in emails and through other places, and we can really focus on the other parts of the meeting. But really, what does it look like for the business part of our meeting? This is where we're going to make our decisions about how are we going to spend our club money? What are we going to do throughout the year? You might be thinking about what are those activities that we want to do and decide on as a club. This might also be where you have some committees that come out, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. And, there's going to be discussions. And one of the other important things that we do in the business portion is our reports. So our secretary's report and our treasurer's report, those are usually things that we cover during the business portion of our meeting. So when we're thinking about that, we really need to think about how are we going to prep for the business part of our meeting if it's going to be a really short part of our meeting. And I'm so excited that I have Megan Searing here to share this tonight. I like to call her my business part of my meeting guru, and she makes business super fun. So Megan, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then I've got a few questions for you about how do we make our business meetings a little more fun and creative.
Yeah, so business does not need to be business. We can actually kind of mix party with business. We want to make sure that people are having an engaged and, a good time while we're getting things done. And that's what 4-H is all about. Frankly, there have been studies done that have found that 4-Hers are at least twice as likely to be civically active. So we know that many of our 4-H members grow up to be wonderful 4-H leaders, and they become active within their city government, their county government, and even higher than that. There's pretty amazing 4-H alumni everywhere. So we want tonight to be able to share some tips and tricks with you in how we can make things a little bit more fun and engaging for the quarter of the meeting that you're going through actual business.
Megan, one of the things I think that sets our meeting up for success is thinking about agendas. So when we're thinking about how do we make our agendas fun and really how do we empower our youth leaders? We have those awesome presidents, vice presidents, secretaries, and treasurers, those leadership teams that we bring together. How do we empower them to be part of building that agenda out?
Yeah, so youth really are the basis of 4-H. So our youth are the ones who need to be invested in helping us come up with that agenda. There's a lot of different ways that we can have them do that. One of the most effective ways that I found is actually having a mini meeting after the meeting. So after your traditional 4-H club or county-wide committee meeting is over, your officers are going to sit down right away with your general leader to come up with what your agenda is going to be for the next time you meet. Frankly, an agenda I like to look at like a recipe, and your officers are all the different chefs in the kitchen. And you need everybody there to make sure that our different ingredients get mixed up and baked and brought out the right way. But there's not necessarily one set way that you need to run a meeting. Those agendas are really big sets of puzzle pieces that we can put together in a lot of different ways.
I love that idea, Megan, about putting it together in a different way, using that puzzle piece analogy, like even mixing up your agenda, right? So you could mix up your agenda in a lot of ways. So are there some different tools or techniques that you've thought about? I know you told me about a few that I thought were really fun as ways to create that agenda and use that agenda in a new fun way in your meeting that maybe people might not have thought of before.
Yeah, so I'm a very hands-on kind of person. I enjoy mixing up the agenda just so that we can get off our bums for a little bit and maybe move around. So the first suggestion I'd like to offer is potentially putting your recreation or social time in the middle of your meeting. I'm not sure about you, but our club has a lot of younger members in, and let's be honest, I don't really like sitting for more than 10 or 15 minutes either. So if you notice everybody becoming a little bit squirrely, it's a great idea to bounce up and do a brain break. Have somebody lead a camp song or a game for everybody to move around and get the blood rushing again. Now, you had asked me some different ways that we could do agendas or run meetings, and we've had some creative shots at that in Shawano County as well. We have done sidewalk chalk meetings where we actually write down the different activities or events out in a large concrete area, and then we have people either adding ideas or voting for ideas with their own piece of chalk. That doesn't work year round, but now that we've hit the time of snow, you can honestly do that with some posters and even make it a little bit fun. Give kids like a squirt bottle with some colored water in there that they can go vote that way. We've also found some success in Post-its. I'm sure your extension educators have used a million Post-its and maybe even smelly markers. Post-its are a great way to communicate, especially if we can't be in real close proximity of one another. Another idea I have, and that I know others have used, is that you can actually pull your different agenda items out of a hat. So bring it right back to Frosty the Snowman, have somebody bring a hat with the different parts of the meeting in, and have somebody pick it out. What are we going to do now? Hey, the first thing we're going to do is new business this time, or we are going to be doing attendance at the end of the meeting. Once again, they're just recipe puzzle pieces, and they can be done in any order you want. The last really cool thing I've seen is that people have used like Velcro stickies on a piece of cloth to put up the different items of the meeting and then let different people or kids have their shot at going ahead and rearranging them in different ways. Once again, there's no right or wrong way to run a meeting, but we do want to make it engaging for everybody that's there. You shouldn't want you don't want to be bored by the end of your meeting. And I feel like we have some room to spice things up in each of our kitchens right now.
Yeah, Megan, you talked about this a little bit, but could we do some of these things virtually?
Oh, absolutely. There are some great pieces of technology out there that we are even using right now. So Zoom can be a little intimidating when you begin, but that it doesn't have to stay that way. Practice makes perfect. And frankly, our kids are really well versed in these things. So we can utilize pieces like Zoom. Some folks have had luck using different tools like Google Docs, where you can actually see all sorts of different people in there typing at the same time. Another way that I have seen people adding different pieces to agendas before the meeting is by posting it within their Facebook group. The one way that I will caution you with that is that you want to be very inclusive to make sure that if you have a family that is not on Facebook or that's not on the platform, that you find a way to involve them. And maybe that's just having somebody call them and finding out what their suggestions are. But there are a million and one amazing things out there. And really, talk to your youth, use your youth, empower your youth, because they know what's fun and they know what they want to participate in. So who better to ask than our kids?
Yeah, I could even see them using that hat activity on a Zoom and having one of the youth assigned to being the people who pulled the paper or a couple different people. I think that'd be a really fun, different way to do that. So you've talked a lot about empowering youth, and I think this is a really good time, Megan, to move into committees. So if I'm president of our club and we're discussing in business and there's a topic that is going on and I'm not sure where to go with it, is there something you can tell me to help with committees? Tell me how committees work. How do I start incorporating committees in my club? Because I may not have used them before, or maybe it's a short-term committee. Can you talk a little bit more about what is a committee and how is it helpful?
Yeah, absolutely, Jill. So I like to look at a committee as like your go team. Your committee is there to solve a problem or to offer opportunities, a deeper delve into them. So once again, I told you I'm a visual person. I like to think of it like bubble gum. So when you're chewing your bubble gum, there are some bubbles that you blow and they get bigger and they're bigger and they stick for a long time, right? You want them to be there a long time. They're committees you keep using over and over again. We call those standing committees because they don't really go away. In Shawano County, we do have standing committees that really are involved with most of the project areas. So we have the horse committee that sits down and decides all sorts of different educational events that are going to be happening for the youth throughout the year. Then once in a while, we have some committees that we blow up, and then we pop because we don't need them the whole time. They might be there to solve a problem or to plan a specific action, perhaps a club trip with education or a recreational opportunity. Those committees that pop after a short amount of time are called ad hoc committees. Now, when we look at committees, there's a lot of different ways that they can form. It might be a group of people who are thinking, you know, oh my goodness, I believe that we should have a camp committee in this county, and they could go in and take a real good look at the research and the needs of the county and then come up with different opportunities. Sometimes it's because a problem is identified and we want a set amount or some different people with different perspectives to come in and work on that problem. I would like to repeat that it is great to have diversity on committees. Although sometimes that can lengthen your discussions, you really want different viewpoints. You want a lot of people to look at the same issue and be able to come up with ideas around it. So let's talk about that for a second. A committee is really there to come up with options for your full group to go back to. I am hoping that all of you haven't been in a meeting where it's gone on and on and on and on, but I know when I was a kid and in 4-H, those discussions around our club trip, where should we go? What day should we go? How much should we pay? What are we going to eat? Who's going to buy it? Those conversations can roll on for upwards of 90 minutes. No one wants to sit there discussing that for 90 minutes. Reminder, the business portion of our club is just like 1/4 of the pie. So those committees are in a great place that they can be effective with time and come out with decisions that the club can then approve or can decide to send back to committee or decide that it's no longer an issue. So your committees are really there to save time and energy by meeting at a different time than your general club meeting and then bringing those options back to the full club. That way they can make their decision based on the research that your GO team or your committee came up with.
Megan, I think those are such good ideas. So tell me, I know that you have a lot of young people in your county that are leading through committees. How have you empowered your young people, your youth members, to lead through committees?
Yeah, so our youth on committees have the same voice as our adults do. They are voting members. Your youth on committees should be able to chair or act as secretary. That's the whole point of 4-H, right? Is that we're giving youth these opportunities. Adults have wonderful ideas. And let's be honest, you guys hold the calendar and the checkbooks for kids. I totally understand that. And yet, this is the area where our youth get the opportunity to really stretch out their legs and make some calls, do some research, find out where we want to go, what we want to do, what we want to learn about, how much it's going to cost. Because those skills are skills that make kids ridiculously employable once they graduate.
That is such a good point, and really thinking about those life skills they're building now that they're also going to be used into their future. And I think those are such good things. And you know, one of the things that we'd love to know in your counties, are there different committees that your clubs and groups are using? We'd love to hear those. Type those in the chat box if you'd love to share that. I think that's always beneficial to other individuals from other counties or other groups because they can see, oh, this is the way that we're actually using that. You know, I think, Megan, you brought some really great ideas and opportunities about how we can put our agendas together, about some different ways that we can utilize committees. And I think the next thing we're going to move to is actually Marie's going to talk with you a little bit about using technology to lead, because we have a lot of technology to lead right now. So Marie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jill. That is one of the things that people always used to ask me. So, you know so much about technology. And I would say that's because I know the young people in the room and I went and asked them and they gave me great advice. And so that's the one thing that we want to share with you tonight is that this is a time when we need to use technology to meet because we're not able to have in-person meetings for a lot of our groups. And the young people are using it all of the time. They know what works. They know what works if it's a Zoom or if it's Google or whatever type of method it may be. So it's really important to engage them and even kind of let them take the lead. Yes, we still need adults to support and know the information, but they can really take the lead in how that technology might look. And a couple of things that we talked about as a group is can we make meetings more efficient? And so one of the things we talked about and we're doing tonight is using chat, engaging those young 4-Hers. There are some reaction tabs that we have on the bottom of the screen. Those are some great things that you can do. And if you look at your participant list, there's ways that you can say yes or no, or talk a little slower, or raise your hand if you have a question. And so all of those are features that we know about on Zoom that probably your young people could tell you about on Google or whatever works for them, because they're doing it all of the time. And so they really have an idea. And then I think the key point that I heard Megan talk about as well is physically having them stand up, maybe touch their nose, touch their head, whatever it is, because that's the thing that we've heard over and over again is that young people do have a lot of screen time. We'll agree. So now we need to figure out how we can get them to actually do some movement along with that screen time, whatever it may be, to make it fun and engaging. So again, we would challenge you to think about how can you empower the young people in your clubs and groups to lead with technology. So that's really the time that we want to think about. And speaking of technology, we have had some chance for people to put things in the chat. And so I am going to call on my colleague, Frank, who is a business guru. And he has great insights to share with us about making decisions in your club. And I heard somebody asking the question about Robert's Rules of Order. So Frank, can you tell us a little bit about Robert's Rules, or the handout that we put out for people is called Bob's Rules? What's the difference? What can you tell us about that?
Sure, Marie, and thanks. And hello, everybody. It's so nice to have you on tonight. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk a little bit about Robert's Rules. So Robert's Rules of Order is a way to basically organize meetings in a effective and a fair and an efficient kind of a way. So if you can think of it in those terms, that's really what it's about. In fact, when it was developed, it was developed originally by a man actually from the U.S. Army in 1876, whose last name was Robert. It was Henry Martin Robert, and he actually adapted and created, he adapted rules from Congress and created them for non-legislative assemblies. So because in that time, and he actually was working out in San Francisco, there were a lot of things happening, a lot of meetings happening, a lot of groups happening. They were just tumultuous. The groups were just really hard to manage. So he took these rules of Congress and decided to adapt them. So yes, Robert's Rules has lots of great guides for us. And if your club or group is using Robert's Rules and you have that in your bylaws that you're recommended that you use that, then definitely try to stick to Robert's Rules. Try to stick to that as your main source of making decisions. I think often we get sort of tongue-tied when we're talking about making motions and trying to decide how to use Robert's Rules. So I appreciate the fact that the group has put together kind of a straightforward way to think about the basic elements of Robert's Rules, which is getting an issue moving forward. And those you've nicknamed Bob's Rules, which I think is kind of clever. So, and it's that way of thinking that with those simple steps in mind, that that you're going to be able to, I think, simplify how young people, especially, can get their head wrapped around how to use Robert's Rules. Because Robert's Rules is a very effective tool. It can move your meeting along. And again, it really is a great way to make sure that things are effective, fair, and efficient. And when you're making some decisions in your meeting, Marie, you really want to be sure that everything seems fair, that everything seems, that we're being, efficient with our time. And that, as Megan suggested, we're not just going on and on and on and on talking about things forever and not really making any decisions about it. So the thoughts behind Bob's Rules are just basically that you are doing it in steps. So you're thinking about making a motion, getting a second, having a discussion, restating that motion, and then voting. So you're making the motion, you're getting a second, you're having a discussion about it, You're going to restate it so everybody hears it, and then you're voting. Now, one of the other things that I think is kind of interesting is the language that we use, Marie. And often, as I said, people get a little tongue-tied and they want to make motions, and people will say, and young people especially will say, I make a motion to do this. And really what I think I want people to think more about is to move something along. And because that really is the words that Robert's rules would like you to use. They would like you to think about not making something happen, but moving something along. So you are moving an issue along. So you're going to move a motion. You're going to move something. You're going to move an action. And then you're going to get some discussion on that action. And then you're going to restate what that action is, what those two people who are moving that issue along would like to see happen. And then you're going to vote. So I think Robert's Rules is a great tool, and it's a great way for making decisions. It's not the only way to make decisions in groups. I think one of the other more common ways that, that you might hear about is a word called consensus. So, and consensus is a little different way of thinking. It is really about taking the issue and putting it out there. So you're discussing it first. You're basically throwing it out there, framing up a proposal around it, and then finding out sort of and modifying it and tweaking it. And, you're doing all different kinds of things to the topic. And then finally, when there's no longer any disagreement, then you are going to come to some kind of a consensus or a final agreement. Consensus to me takes a lot more communication skills. And so I think it works better with older young people and with older groups because you got to talk about it a lot. You got to talk about all these different things that are happening and frame and shape as you go. Where Robert's Rules let you use a little more formal language and kind of quickly move something along and then dispose of that issue. So those are some thoughts I have about decision making. I think that clubs could really be thinking about, Marie.
So Frank, can I ask you, our key that we keep pulling on in all night is how can we empower youth to be those decision makers and to be those leaders when they're making motions and following, whether it's Robert's Rules or, and I will remind people that these handouts are available on the website, because one of the things that I think is really helpful about Bob's Rules is that it has the actual words right there that you can follow to make that motion.
Right. Well, I would say, Marie, it's about giving young people exposure to actually having an opportunity to say these words, to practice using them. I think one of the ways that I know that we've had some success is to offer some mock meeting training where young people actually get to kind of try it on for size, see how it works for them. So we have, we once a year in our county, we put on a leadership day where we have a safe kind of environment. We actually have, we're fortunate to have some connections with the University of Wisconsin River Falls Ag Ed students who are experts in parliamentary procedures. They take classes in it, go out and do judging in it across the state. And they come down and they help us out and they do some mock meeting work with us. And so young people that have, and adults that have a chance to attend that, will have a chance to try it on for size. I think that's one way, is just, you have to practice. Practice makes perfect. I think the other way is doing some of the things that Megan suggested to begin with, and some of the rest of you talked about earlier, which is having some of those meetings. I love that suggestion Megan gave about having that meeting right after your meeting's done to prep for the next meeting, so that people kind of can anticipate what's going to be the old stuff we're going to talk about, what's going to be the new things that might come up, and what might we have motions around. Because you're not going to have motions on everything. There are going to be some things that you're just not going to need a motion about, but there are going to be some things that you might need to dispose of to have that issue move forward. And so, because you want to move things along so that the club feels like it has action. So having those meetings ahead of time with you as leaders, with your youth, I think is a great suggestion to just encourage them then to try it on for size and be prepared.
Hey, Frank, this is Melinda. I have a quick question for you as a follow-up to that. Something that you talked about too, Megan, as we were talking about officers and officer roles. So my question is, maybe it's not a question, it's maybe a statement about how important the role of our youth elected, if we have youth elections, and our secretary might be in those decisions. Because I don't know about you guys, but I have been part of meetings in my volunteer roles where I feel like we have this same conversation month after month, and none of us can quite remember what we talked about last month, and so those notes can come in handy, and that may be that meeting after the meeting, where your secretary kind of helps you reframe what should go. Your secretary's role could be really helpful in framing out next month's agenda. Going through what we talked about there, it really is empowering those officers to step up in those roles. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that. Yeah, and the question that I have for you is, I am not. As a 4-H educator, I find myself fumbling for Robert's rules and words to say. And so the Bob's rules works for me, but if I have a club or group that wants more in depth, we might need to look to somebody like Frank to help us lead through that, because even I'm not so, it takes years to learn Robert's rules really well. So, I mean, I'm just wondering if there's other resources. I think we can put some out in our resource documents as well. About those things. But I just had some thoughts about different officers and their roles in helping to make club decisions in those roles.
Yeah, Melinda, I think that's a great point about the secretary, and hopefully you can work with your club secretaries to take good notes, to take good minutes of what's happening, because as you're having, say, that meeting, and I don't know, Megan, if you would suggest this too, but to look back right away in that meeting after the meeting, and start to really see, well, what are some of the things that came up tonight, and that's really going to help you form your business for the next time. Many times too, I think you'll want to be looking around, scanning the environment for what's coming up just in 4-H in general. Are there announcements that you see coming across your email, either from your extension office or from the state 4-H office? Are there things that you're seeing about and hearing about in your community that you really would like to see your club get involved in? Maybe someone picks up the phone and calls you, or calls one of your other parents in your club and says, hey, can the 4-H club be involved in this? And that could become a business item. So there are lots of different ways, I think, that we find business items that they can come to us, or we seek them out. And then I think also your comment about, yes, it can take a while to become really good at Robert's rules. I think, there are certified parliamentarians in this world. I am not one of them, but, who do nothing but study that, and they help all kinds of organizations and groups with complex issues. Really, I think it's that idea, though, of just learning some basic tools to move decisions along and dispose of them, and so in other words, take the issue, talk about it, dispose of it. And by dispose of it, I mean we're moving it along, we're moving it on to some other kind of an action. And if you can get that in your head, then yes, there are lots of other nuances, and I think moving to learning how to move to send something to a committee is a great little more advanced step, to which it means then the issue doesn't necessarily go away or just get tabled, but you formally move it to a committee. I mean, that's another just motion you can use. That is a way to practice one other level of Robert's rules. And then you use those committees just like Megan suggested, and you check with them and see, are they ready to report back? Is the motion that went to them to talk about the sledding party ready to be brought up at the next meeting? Or does it need a couple more meetings before it comes up? So are those helpful kind of things, Melinda, to get at some of the things you're asking?
Absolutely. I just think it's an important opportunity for us to embrace and engage all of our youth officers in that process. Our president runs the meeting, our vice president can help support it. Our secretary has a really important role in that as well. And so remembering that this is all about giving young people, and Laura, I think, said it in chat as well, 4-H is a safe place for young people to learn these things.
Right. Practice and then reinforce. Practice and reinforce. That's what, so reinforce your officers and have them practice doing it. And I really think that will help.
So I would like to bring up one more point. It is really important that your officers are the people leading your meeting. There is a lot of great information that I know each of our counties puts in our newsletters, and We're not going to give our kids experience if the general leader is going to stand up and read the entire newsletter out loud. So that's going to create just a little bit of pre-work on one end. I've seen, especially in our county, that there are some Cloverline reporters. And so kids will take a look at the kids who make up their club and then highlight some of the different opportunities that are coming up in the newsletter. Agendas are just, I cannot overstate the importance of agendas. Nothing in your meeting should be a giant surprise to your president or your officer team. These things should be pre-discussed. And then when you have your meetings, you can have some of the discussions, but it's not going to take 2 to 3 hours to make it through all of your business. It should not take 2 or 3 hours to make it through all of your business. Nobody wants that. And I love 4-H, but let's make our business quick and efficient. I'm not saying chop it up, but let's make it efficient, and then let's get on so we've got time to learn and laugh and do all of the other amazing things that 4-H is all about.
And I think also, building on what you said, Megan, is allowing your members to just talk and tell about what they've been experiencing. I have several clubs I know that one of the things that Zoom has allowed me to do is really attend club meetings in my county much more than I normally would. And I like that opportunity to really see how different clubs are operating. And I really see and hear clubs allowing their members to just talk and share. And reports can be short and to the point. Did anybody attend the county cat workshop that was advertised? And can you tell us what you learned there? Did anybody go to any workshops on a state or county level? Would you like to share something about that? Those create kind of pop-up quick hitter kind of business type things that give young people that confidence, that ability to give a short report and to inform the body as to what's going on. And that really can help, I think, build some confidence along the way and involve young people directly in your meetings as well.
So Frank, I have some questions for you. We hear questions a lot from our volunteers about, like, in this time, how are our young people making those decisions? Like, how are they once they've made their motions and they've had their discussions, the actual voting process, and what does that look like? And so I'm just wondering if you have some ideas of, we also talk about making our meetings fun. And so how can that process of voting really be something that is fun and engaging for all of our members to participate in?
Yeah, Dawn. So I think it really depends on if we're doing a hybrid type of situation, if we're doing a virtual situation, or in person. So I think there are some really some good possibilities for in-person voting that help do some of the things really that Megan even said to get us moving a little bit, raising your hand, a show of hands, just to get an agreement or a disagreement to something, standing up when you vote maybe, or sitting down, voting with your feet, where they actually move to one side of the room or to another side of the room, where they actually physically get up and gather. I think when you get to virtual kinds of things, you heard, I believe tonight we started talking a little bit about polling and how you can set up Zoom polls ahead of time using Google Forms, or using the yes/no feature in Zoom, or the even the reactions tab. It depends on the kind of vote that you're going for, but if it's really just a basic issue, I think some of those things can be really creative ways to help mix up the voting a little bit, just to get people a little more active online. And so those are some things that come to mind for me, Dawn, in ways that I think you could use creative techniques. One other thing that comes to mind is, and this is often used in consensus, is the stop and go light technique, where you might create some basic cards, and depends on if you either want straight up stop and go, or you want red, yellow, and green. And red, yellow, and green will give you the classic idea of red, I'm not in favor of moving forward with something. Yellow, I'm a little cautious, I might want to talk about it some more. And green, yes, I'm good with it. So that's a great way, when you're using that consensus technique, to use a classic symbol of the stop and go light And that's used in group facilitation often, just to get the temperature of the group, to find out. And remember, in consensus, you're building your solution along the way, and you're talking about it a lot more. So you might want those moments where you're just going to stop and say, let's see how everybody thinks right now.
So one of the things that we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, Frank, the red, yellow, and green cards. So as an officer, as a leader that's getting ready for a meeting, we could door drop or no contact pickup, or have someone grab 3 things that are around them. I literally just grabbed an envelope. Dawn had a Post-it note. I have a notebook. Come to the meeting with something red, yellow, and green that you might have around your house. It could be a fun game, recreation kind of in there as well, to do those kinds of things. But there was a question in chat that I think warrants some conversation. How do you vote, or how do you get youth voice? If I have 4 kids at home. So how do I get a vote from all 4 of those kids who would have a voice or would be raising their hand, should they be in person? So what are some tips and techniques you guys have for how you get everyone's voice heard? Because it really is about youth voice when there's more than one person on the Zoom or virtual call.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I guess I would say, and I don't know, Megan, if you can help me out here too. I mean, I'm thinking about that as you talk about that, Melinda. I mean, I think certainly, if you're doing thumbs up or some sort of a visual sign, if everybody's gathered around the camera, they're going to be able to see that. Or if you do, just a even or thumbs down or thumbs up, something like that. Just to give people that opportunity to be visually seen. You have to be a little cautious with voice votes that way, because number one, you would want to certainly use a term that, especially virtually, sounds a little different. So the classic voting terms in Parley Pro are yay and nay, right? Well, they sound very much alike. So you might just say yes or no, or some other very distinguishable terms. I think it depends also if you really need to keep track of the vote. So in other words, if the vote is going to be something that, you really need a tally, then you're really going to need that physical sign of some kind. I think also signage, just, yes, no signs or placards or something, again, that's visual, to show that everybody in that group has a chance to offer their opinion. Megan, I don't know, do you have any other things that you might suggest about that? Those are some things that came to mind for me.
I think you hit the high points, and there are some really valid points in the chat that in some places internet connectivity is bad. I live in Shawano County. I feel what you're saying, and same thing. In fact, we live in Weasel Dam Road, so that should tell you that our connectivity is not great too. However, if people are calling in to be on the meeting through that way, if they're able to on their cell phone, another thing you could do is text the leader at the same time that you have the phone on speakerphone. So that would be a way to, file your vote without saying, hi, this is Megan and I am saying XYZ. You're right, there are some barriers, and I would like to share that we are all continuously learning. Like, we really are all in this together. And so if you guys find something that works well for you, please let us know. We would love to have some new ideas to share with our clubs all across the state of Wisconsin.
I think that's a really great suggestion too, Megan. Just one more thing I'll add on that is that you do not have to necessarily commit to one form of voting, especially if technology is going to be a barrier. So if you, clearly you can't do a visual sign if you're on the phone and you're on the Zoom. So text is a good way to get something through, maybe a quick email, maybe some way to get your voice heard. And it's one of those times in our lives where we have to adapt, and we have to be a little bit more flexible if we're going to get voices heard and people are going to feel like they can participate. I think what's most important is that people do have a way to get their voice heard, their vote recorded. And so, yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to commit to just one way of voting and say, too bad, so sad. If you're on the phone, you don't get to vote. Well, that's not going to work.
So the other thing that I would just add to this is if your club is facing a really maybe contentious vote, and you don't necessarily want to hold up the no, I don't want to do that, or the yes, we do, or an election that could be could be tough. Please reach out to your local educator. We are here to help you through that. And we've worked with many clubs through these last 8 months on creating a survey, a Google form, a Qualtrics form, anonymously, the same way you would have done with a paper vote that no one would have known. And so we are here to work with you on that. There's I love the chat, you guys. Keep that up. We learn from you guys just as much as we hope you're learning some new tips and tricks from us. Reach out and let us know how we can help. And if we don't have an answer, and we might not, we will empower and embrace our entire state to come up with new ideas and different technologies. So, thank you.
And I was just going to throw something out there. We had a group that met last week, and they decided that they were going to vote on a Google form after the meeting happened. And they tried to figure out, what do you do with multiple kids in a household? Well, guess who's using technology for their schoolwork? And so several of those kids had, it may not be the email that we use in 4-H Online, but somehow they could use that school email address to do that Google voting ballot. So that was another opportunity that was like, oh, well, that's easy because they all have one. That's how they're doing school right now. So that's another opportunity as well. And again, goes back to the young people of giving us some guidance and ideas that we want to share. So I'll throw it back to you, Melinda.
No, I just appreciate the conversation around this and all of these topics. This is a different kind of annual leader training. As we were framing this out and talking with our program managers, we really wanted to give you, like we've been hearing from our clubs in the counties that we are in, how do we do this? What are some tips and some techniques and some ideas? And so we wanted this training. We hope you are finding useful information, snippets, and things that you can try. This is the beginning, as I mentioned earlier, of a year's worth of training. Or I shouldn't say training, a year's worth of opportunities to connect. And so on your screen, you'll see a new series that has been released called Clover Connections. You should have gotten one in the connection information for this session. The first one that we released was actually the very basic introduction to 3 parts of a meeting. So thank you all for, if you watched that, and somebody in the chat early said, yes, we talked about this already in those Clover Connections. We're really excited. We were able to do a more in-depth dive into things like Robert's Rules of Order and decision-making and consensus, and into how do we set up committees? How do we get started if we've never done that before? So we did interviews with Megan and Frank. Those Clover Connection videos will be released very shortly on that website. The idea here, you all, is that we create timely, relevant, and helpful things for you right now. So I saw in chat, how do we do installations? How do we do officer training? Those are the video pieces that we will put out based on your comments. And what the 4 of us, Jill, Dawn, Marie, and myself, need from you are, what are the topics? What are you struggling with? What are you hearing from your members or from your families? And how can we help you? In this time, more than any time, we want to be sure we're creating resources that will help you do the job and the volunteer role that you have. We know that it's not as easy as it used to be, but maybe we'll find some new opportunities to make it just as engaging and just as fun for our young people as well. So if you have concepts, I can tell you, Donna, that I've already gotten that list. I put that on my list as it came through there, and installations, great concepts. So if you have ideas, please put them up in chat. And Dawn.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to comment that we are our team is going to review the things that were in chat tonight to see if there are some themes and things that we can help with. So again, keep putting those questions right in the chat box. We will definitely look through those and use those to kind of frame out future pieces.
Awesome. So those Clover Connection videos have their own landing page on the new UW-Madison 4-H website. And so on that page, I think Dawn's going to share it for us right here. To find that, you will click on the 4-H tab, then the volunteer area. And and I'm using two screens for the first in a weird way tonight, so I can't see your screen. But on the volunteer resources tab, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see volunteer resources. Click on that, keep going down a little bit further, and you'll see Clover Connection Leader Resource videos. And it's going to take you out to a bit.ly. It's going to take you out to the website there, and they will be listed. There's 3 out there for you right now, and more coming shortly. As we mentioned, we have the how to make a club decision and how to start committees. Those 2 will be released very shortly. I also want to make you aware or remind you that there's 2 more of these sessions. This was very focused on business or leading. The next sessions, and Dawn's showing you on the screen right there how you can find the other additional training right there on the screen. There are 2 more coming up, one on December 1st. That one will focus on learning or education in 4-H meetings, and you can still register for that here. And session 3, which is on December 10th, same time, Zoom link. That one will focus on laughing and how to do recreation in 4-H clubs and groups. The beauty of these 3 sessions, everybody, is that these topics can be done in any part of the circle. We don't have to do business before we have recreation. We don't have to do education right in the beginning of your meeting. You can spice that through, and we're going to talk through some hopefully really great tips and techniques for all of those different topics as they're coming up. So feel free to reach out, and again, let us know what questions you have out there, and how we can help. That's what we are here for this year, is to really help us all get through this strangest of 4-H years that we're right in the middle of. So if you haven't put your name in the chat with your county name, be sure you do that. We will be, as we said, we'll be going through that chat pod. We'll capture all of that. We'll get back to you with questions. We have tons of ideas. So much of what happens in 4-H happens because of you guys, not because of us, but because you, as 300 volunteers on this call, are willing to volunteer to do to be the adult support to a group of young people learning. And we wouldn't have a Wisconsin 4-H program without each and every one of you. It's really exciting as I scroll through my cameras to see young people as well joining us tonight. So thank you, young people, for jumping on the call. I know some of you might have been in front of a computer a lot already today. What happens is this community of Wisconsin 4-H, and we all get to learn and share together. I loved the back and forth and the ideas that came from the chat tonight. So thank you all for doing that. It's how we learn and grow. And on behalf of the whole team, thank you for that. Jill, Dawn, Marie, any last minute comments? We are 3 minutes early, everybody. And we try to end on time, or start on time and end just a little early, so we can all keep moving forward.
We will be sending you an email in the next couple of days or so, or next week or so, with an evaluation that we'd love for you to give us some feedback about the training tonight. And again, there'll be space there for you to let us know what questions you have. So when you get that, please feel free to fill it out.
Also, I want to thank Megan and Frank. Thank you so much for being on and being our resident experts on business for tonight. We really appreciate you, along with Laura Pine, John DeMont Mullen, Jennifer Slenchen, and Katie Supneski, for all of your behind-the-scenes work. We couldn't have done it without you. Megan and Frank, are there any last minute things that you want to, as we have these last 2 minutes, I want to give you the floor now that we've covered all the nitty-gritty of the next coming up pieces.
Go forward and have great meetings, everyone. You have very engaged and interested and talented young people just waiting for your guidance. And I know you can make a great partnership. So have great meetings.
And 4-H is fun. Remember, 4-H is fun. You guys are forming the future. Don't forget the fun, all right? I have confidence, and I'm so thankful that you all joined us for tonight. Thanks for being here.
It's really great to see so many of you. And I second and third and fourth Megan's thoughts about how these life skills really help prepare young people for the world of work. So these are great skills to learn. So you're going to do great.
So in 4-H world, we start with fun. We hope we started with fun. We're going to end with fun too. Join us. We've been doing this a lot with our own staff. We don't get to see each other as often as we'd like to see each other either. And so our way of saying thanks to our neighbors is by doing virtual high fives. So if you have your cameras on, I want you to put your hands up and just give the people next to you high fives. I'm high-fiving Megan and I'm high-fiving Frank. So I see Tanya on my screen who just went up. Don't forget the people above and below you. This is kind of fun. And if you feel really talented, go angles, corner to corners. That always takes me a little bit longer to figure out, but remember that we can make fun. We can have a lot of fun in 4-H and fun in unique ways and infiltrate that in your everyday life. I spend a lot of time on Zoom, so I like getting high fives across the board. So thank you all so much for joining us. You'll get an email from us, and we hope that you consider joining us next week for the session on learning. That's it, learning next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Bye, everybody.